everyone, this is the channel AgileSeeker. My name is Arman, and today our guest is Tricia Munsey. Am I pronouncing the name correctly?
Yes.
Great. Tricia is a VP Senior Scrum Master, agility lead with an enormous amount of certification like PMI, ACP, CSPCM, CSPO, and many other stuff. She works in the JP Morgan Chase and Company and from Florida. Thank you for joining us today. We have a lot to discuss, and thank you for finding time.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me and having me join in and have a conversation with you this morning.
Great. So the general question, like let's call it as a breakfast question, and considering that it's like early morning on your side, how you get introduced to Agile? How was like your first introduction? Oh, there is an Agile. So what's it is about? How was your first steps?
So it was just a matter of right place, right time. And I was working for a smaller company that was looking for a better way of getting the job done. I'm sure you're familiar with the traditional project management path, waterfall, and the way the team was working before just wasn't delivering items on time with quality. And so part of the journey there was finding better ways of working, and that pointed very quickly towards an agile path. And then it was a matter of preferred framework that was appropriate for that setting and so forth. And since it was a smaller company and it was a newer approach, I was able to explore options, do some research, take some courses, and lead the team in a direction that worked well for that scenario. And for me, that was definitely Agile. And the framework that they used initially was Scrum.
Yeah, I see. So it's usually firstly Scrum, and one question arises from here. So for the team that you have leaded, it was the first experience with Agile as well.
Mm-hmm.
So how they reacted, because usually people like the basic people reaction is like not protesting, but at least resisting for something to as a change. Was this resistance in place?
There was some. The good news for me was everyone agreed that what we were doing wasn't great. There had to be a better way. We weren't thrilled with where we were, and thankfully, I worked with a group of people that were willing to try something different. And we had several teams in that company, and so it wasn't an agile transformation where all at once the company said, now we're agile, which sometimes companies do that, but that was not the case here. It was, okay, try it with this team, and if it works well, expand it, and if it works well, expand it. And so the initial team that I was working with, we had a bit of a learning curve, but one thing that was perfect was part of being agile and part of Scrum is making sure that we take that time to inspect and adapt. And so that first team, we had a chance to execute and then say, well, this worked and this didn't, and what does this look like for us in the future, and then proceed. As other teams saw the success that we had, because we had some large successes very early, there was an enthusiasm for it, and other people wanted to be part of that, and other people wanted to work the way our team was working, less command control, more team oriented, more the people doing the work making the decisions and the commitments. And so that observation led to additional teams taking that on, and then it just became the way that the team wanted to work. I loved that. I loved that it was more organic, and I loved that it was team driven and not some mandate that was handed down. And I think that's part of why it was successful and worked well, was everyone that started, learned, grew, we worked together, and it was very much a voluntary participatory thing. It was not, you must be agile, because that's kind of a difficult spot to be in, especially if the team had been happy with where they were. So
yeah, usually like the very interesting case you're saying, like you had to be agile. A lot of companies, in my experience, they mislead to use the agile correctly, because they like wake up in the morning and decide that we are agile from this moment, and
yeah.
then They require the certain results, certain behavior, certain maturity from the teams which they do not possess because they never had the opportunity to make mistakes, to learn, to adapt to something, and many of them fail and say like, yeah, you know, this agile stuff it isn't working for us because for this and for that. So the company, you mentioned the company is small, and this guides me to the one more, let's call it agile myth that I usually hear. It's that Agile doesn't work for the enterprise companies. Like usually it works for the outsourcing companies, for the small stuff. But for example, for enterprise companies, which had to do yearly planning, 5-year planning, or quarterly high-level mandatory plannings, it's like an impossible to work in agile environment to make this all this, flexible thinking and so on. I need to say that I totally disagree with this, but just to want to hear your thoughts about this and how you usually fight with this because you do work in an enterprise, I mean, in a big enterprise company. So how is your approach with this bad thinking, let's call it like this?
So I've heard that. Thankfully, I haven't encountered that really. I have worked, I started with a very small company in my agile journey. And now I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum working for a large company. Um, and it can be great either way. I think you did hit on a very important point, and that is the agile mindset. And so, in either environment, if you can help people understand that it's not just process, it is also mindset. It is the way that we interact with each other and respect each other that's going to make this successful, then you'll have a much better and more successful experience. There are all kinds of different ways that larger enterprises can make sure that Agile still works for them. There's different um, tools so that some of the existing managers or company structure is still supported in the way that they need, even with the team trying to work with agile or different frameworks. I will say that it is a little bit slower sometimes because there are more people that need to see the message, be influenced, start to experience it, start to make any adjustments in their way of working. So it's not something that is maybe as quick to genuinely be adopted by everyone. Um, it's much easier when you have a small group of people because they all are really able to see what everybody's doing and hear it and feel it. Whereas larger ones, it's a little, it's not a rapid, hey, did you hear what Susie in the next row is doing? The one thing I will say though is also you tend to have different resources available and you tend to be more intentional because of the fact that it's not going to naturally be organic where 50,000 people are going to hear about this one little project and say, hey, that went well, what are they doing, and learn from it. So because it is a different environment, what you're able to do is say intentionally, all right, we want to change, and this is what worked well over here, and then intentionally and methodically spread that message. You do have to have the right plan, you have to have the right people in place, and sometimes that in itself is very challenging, making sure, for example, you have enough Scrum Masters if you're going to use Scrum, and making sure that you have good Agile coaches in place to help support the teams as they're going through that growth. So it's at scale, it is different, but it's definitely doable if
Yeah.
the team truly does Agile. They will find it's not going to be successful, or it would be at least less successful if they do Agile in name only, right? And that I have been exposed to as well. And I think that's one of the biggest difficulties I hear from other Agilists. I'm in a lot of different meetup groups and try to network with others in the community as much as possible. And I think one of the difficulties that we Agilists run into is companies that say, yes, we're doing Agile or we're doing Scrum, but they're just picking selective pieces and they're leaving out some key components. And then, yes, they might say, hey, maybe this isn't working. Why isn't this working? Well, it's like, making meatloaf and just putting meat in and forgetting to add any of the other ingredients. It's not going to be the same. It's going to be like a big meatball instead of your delicious meatloaf at the end of the day, you know. So, yeah, it runs the gamut of the experience, but it can work in small, it can work in large. I've lived it in both.
Yeah, actually, very good point. And one of the things that you mentioned is about that, yeah, we're doing agile and we're doing this certain stuff. I do remember that one of the companies that I went to make a training, they told me, like, I was asking, like, you are doing any agile, you're in agile, you're doing agile. They said, yeah, we have Jira. I was like, okay, because it's like the same for me. It sounded the same. Like if you are someone, are you a successful writer? And he said, yeah, I have a Microsoft Word, something like this. So it's like the same, and many companies really tend about this. And going like further with the question about the enterprise and the small company. So for a person who just started not saying the started the journey, but still on the beginning of his journey of becoming like a project manager in Agile or a Scrum Master, and where is like not saying easier because they have challenges everywhere, but where is like more organically to start career in a small company, like where you have like more flexibility, or in an enterprise where they have like their guidelines, policies, managers, and approval processes, which like organically one way or another, they limit the flexibility and you need to figure out something else. What's your opinion on that?
Person. Um, the reason I say that is different people work better in different environments. It's a culture fit as much as anything else. So if you are comfortable in a position where it's more structured and you're going to have a lot of direction and there's kind of a preset path, maybe even, almost like Scrum in a box kind of thing where this is how we do Agile and this is how you're going to do it and run with it, then maybe go with a bigger company. But if you are someone that likes to have maybe a lot more say in the direction of the path, maybe feel like it's something where you might not have as much support, like maybe you like to be the innovator and you like to be a person that can build the direction of the team, then you're probably going to like a smaller company. And I've been at a few companies, and part of that was intentional decisions of I need a different experience in different environments, and part of it is just making sure you have that right fit for you long term. And one thing I'd like to say is, if you're in a role, um, don't jump jobs. I hate it when people are like, "Oh, I've been here a few weeks, I'm not happy, I'm leaving," and go on to something else, and a few weeks later, they're still not happy. It's like, look within. But do take a look and see if it's truly a great fit for you. There was another book where I read it and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. Where, if you have a New Yorker, which, someone that's more like a city person, and you put them in the country, they might not feel comfortable and they might not be the most productive farmer because that's not where they fit. But if you put them in the city where they're in their element and they have their comfort zone, they might be the most effective stockbroker ever because that's more what they want to do and where they're comfortable. So if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. Now, that's not to say that they couldn't do it. They just might not be happy doing it. They might not be the most effective or efficient in one role if they're in the wrong environment. So, same thing in your agile journey. If you're there and it's just not feeling like you're hitting on all the cylinders, examine why is it. And if it is a cultural fit, don't be afraid to step out and say, well, where might there be a better fit? What am I seeking? Find that and then go after it. Don't stay somewhere if you're miserable, um, because culture and size, they matter. And we spend way too many hours in our day in our work environment for us to not have that fit. Because when you do work with a team where you feel like it's the right environment, maybe it's the right product, even maybe you get to be in one of those lucky positions where you're really excited about what you're building, then everything about life is better. And you're going to do so much more with that team when you feel inspired, when you feel like it's the right place for you to be. So it's not always size, but size does play into it, you know?
I see. Yeah, very good answer. And actually, one thing I noticed you mentioned is it's about the team as well. I think it's also very dependent on which team you will be there. And it's not for example, for me as well, I work for an enterprise. I work for an enterprise, and I work for a small company. And the one thing I noticed, what's the difference is that when a small team, I had much more flexibility, but there was much more difficulties I need to overcome because maybe of the financial capabilities of the company. You have to make more granular decisions because the impact of your wrong actions might be higher. But it's like the opposite side of that was that the learning path was more interesting because you have to learn a lot and you learn to rely on yourself and rely on your own decisions and then stand for them, because from your decisions there are much more. But for example, in enterprise, you might be much more small part of the mechanism and it might be easier, but still. One thing what I wanted to ask you is that I saw in your LinkedIn that you have been a project manager and a scrum master, and like an eternal question, what is not saying easier, what is more challenging, being a project manager, like a head of a project, and how one of my friends is saying the head of the triangle, like in the top of the project, or being a scrum master where you more think about the processes, about the team, the evolution, the motivation, and like more people development. Let's call it like this. What is more challenging for you?
I think they both have their challenges, and it depends on what I'm working on, which aspect would be more challenging, which particular project. The thing is, working with people for me is just natural, right? And so something that I might see as something I thoroughly enjoy doing and helping my team and really spending a lot of time uh, working with the team on maybe even soft skills and team building um, takes just no stressful effort on my part. It's like, hey, let's do this. And I get such joy out of it. Whereas another person might say, oh, I can't put solid parameters on that and I can't measure that. And I don't like to do that. So that Scrum Master side and that team building side might be very difficult for them, whereas it's not for me. And on the flip side, I also found it was really great when I was working with the right projects that worked well with more of the traditional project management style, more of that waterfall side. That was great because I was able to really excel and say, okay, this is what we're doing, and build like that perfect plan and share it with the team, and then guide it all the way from inception to delivered and closed and out in the market. And being like able to steer that from end to end was really great. The thing is that method I found worked really well for something that was known, something where it was like, we know what we're building, we know exactly what it takes. It's really easy to look end to end. That was great for that. But I didn't like trying to apply that when someone was like, I've got this idea and this sounds like really great, and I don't know how it's going to happen, but I already said it's going to be done in 6 months. Go. Then that makes project management extremely stressful because you're like, oh, there's so many unknowns, and you want me to act like we know what's going to be in place in 3 months. And I can say it's green, but it's not really. And that's a whole other kind of stress. So if you're in the right environment, the right project for it, project management's awesome. Flip side, if you're in an environment that's trying to put that round peg in the square hole, I don't care if it's project management or Scrum, it's going to feel painful either way. And I think both can be amazing. But if for example, you don't like dealing with things that can't be measured, or if you're not somebody that likes to try to work collaboratively with people, then Scrum or Agile probably would be less of a fit for you initially.
I think actually it's also a very good school being a project management, because I usually, when I talk with my students, I usually tell them that the Agile is mindset. So it's like perfectly applicable in the project management. However, it's to relate how you apply it and where you can apply that. So I think they are like both very, very interesting. As for me, I can underline from both parts just working with people, because I do like working with people rather than working with papers. Let's call it like this. So that in that case, second option, like Scrum Master, you work a lot with people, a lot more with people. So you have a bachelor degree in psychology from Ashford University. So help you in your job of Scrum Master, working with people, like understanding their behavior, like analyzing how they behave, what they think, what they struggle on. Is it helpful? And I'm not saying that it's required for being a good Scrum Master, but still, is it a helpful hand?
I think it worked perfectly, and it does go hand in hand with what I do every day. Part of that was organizational behaviors, of course, one of the topics that we took a deep dive into as I earned that degree. And I think one of the most important foundational elements for a team is trust and psychological safety, and being able to help them develop that, because it's very common to start with a team that doesn't have that, and they're just a team in name, but they're not yet truly working together. They don't feel safe together. They don't just have that natural flow, because they're just individuals that happen to be working on the same thing. And so the degree definitely helped, but no, it's not required. The really cool thing about Agile is you can go far and you don't have to have some tremendous educational background. You do have to be committed. You do have to spend time learning your craft. And I would strongly encourage you to make sure that you not just, learn and read, but meet and connect. Here we have several meetups that are available. They're free. Most weeks you can go to several and meet other Agilists, other people that are maybe getting started, and some people that have been far along. I would encourage individuals that have any interest to connect with people at all parts of that spectrum. Connect with people that are brand new, so you keep the fresh perspective. Connect with people that are very far along in the career as well, because they've been there. They can help you know what potholes to avoid, maybe some paths to go down that you didn't even know were there. They can open doors for you that were right there, ready and waiting, that weren't even on your radar. I was very fortunate, and I had some excellent team members early on that gave me some direction and said, you can go here to meet some excellent people. And I did. Right away, I was able to go in, and we have lean beers in the evenings here. We have lean coffees in the morning. And as things came up, I was able to attend these meetups, share my questions with this group of people, again, full spectrum, new people, mid-career, and very well-seasoned people, giving me their thoughts and feedback, sharing their experiences. That helps so much. So make sure that you reach out. The Agile community is extremely helpful, welcoming. I find they want to support each other and lift each other up. So be receptive to that, and then give back. Once you are making some progress and you're finding something that works well for you, when someone else needs a lift or needs a little guidance in that area, share that knowledge and help them help their team, or their company.
I think people just forget about how that sharing knowledge and going to the meetups, having this lean beers or lean meetings, you said, is also part of education. And
Mhm.
they consider education is like going somewhere and just studying there. And I usually also recommend my students to visit such places, share with the experienced people, and at least they will gain knowledge, at least they will gain some interesting information, at least there will be like a networking, which is also very, very good stuff in there. Continuing the idea of the degree, you have a lot of certifications. Most of them I know, but still, I usually experience a question from my students, from people who are just stepping in Agile. Is it mandatory to have certifications? Is it helpful in career? Do I need this certification to enter the industry, even in this way? So, what's your idea? What's your approach on certifications? And let's paraphrase it like this: how you choose what certification is interesting for you, and
So
which is not. I mean, I'm not saying that not helpful, but not interesting particularly for you.
great question. So certifications come up a lot. For me, particularly because I do have several, and people often wonder why. And are they helpful? Are they important? One, as with most things in life, you can find a way to get in and to make progress without the certifications, no doubt. Um, I do think if you are going to be working in a Scrum environment, that you should at least have a Scrum Foundations course. Um, the Certified Scrum Master course was my first Scrum course, and it was phenomenal. It was really something that solidified my understanding of this is not just a process. There's so much more to it, the psychology behind it, the people behind it. And it's not command and control. And as a Scrum Master, no one reports to you. So it's definitely about influence and it's about listening to the team, and it was just a whole different approach and it solidified so much about it. Additionally, now that I'm in the field, I'm finding that's kind of table stakes, at least where I am, that if you're looking to become a Scrum Master, that you have a certified Scrum Master certification. There are thousands probably, but at least hundreds of jobs on any given day that are posted for Scrum Masters, for product owners. However, if you go on LinkedIn and you look at those, and then you look at the number of applicants, there's also hundreds of applicants for those positions. So you have to find a way to make sure that you at least have an opportunity to interview and to speak. And to do that, you have to have some table stakes. You have to have some minimum credentials. So I'd say at least, that CSM if you want to go a Scrum Master route, a CSPO if you want to go a product owner route. If you're more generic, PMI also offers their PMI ACP, which was one of my favorite courses because it is so broad. It is framework agnostic. It doesn't say thou shalt do this framework. It was very informative. So there's a lot of ways to get some foundational information, but yeah, you need something at least earlier in your career so that you can have more doors open to you. Do you have to continue to get certification after certification? Not necessarily, no. I was in a unique position where again and again I was looked to for information, guidance, training. Well, since I am not someone that had, years and years of experience beforehand, I was like, no problem. I will make sure we have the information that we need. I'll make sure that the team gets the training that they need. But I didn't want to just, read a book and say, here's what the book says. I wanted to make sure I continued my education, make sure I continued to refine my craft, make sure I talked with more people about it, heard more about it, and then had better information to bring back and share with the team. So I had more driving forces for continuing to learn and grow, almost like I felt as if in order to serve my team, it was one of the important things I wanted to do. And it worked very well. And I still to this day, I'll take a course and I'll come back and I'll talk with the team about it. Hey, I heard about this weekend in this 2-day course. What do you guys think about that? Is that something that we would want to incorporate into what we do? And sometimes yes, and sometimes no, but it's more ideas, more inspiration, more innovation. So I think that's good. I will say that it does not hurt to have multiple certifications. A few times in my life, I've had people say, oh, you don't need certifications. They're not important. And I'm like, great. But at least if I have it, it can't hurt, but it could help. And I find what's more important than like, oh, I can put it on a resume is what it allows me to do at work day in and day out. I have more tools in my toolbox. And it some of the courses that I was like, okay, I'll take this, and I was moderately enthusiastic about, by the time I was done, I was so grateful I had taken them because they had tremendous knowledge, tremendous improvements in my abilities. For example, when I did the ICP ATF, that
Mhm.
was your Agile Trainer Team Facilitation. And I was like, I facilitate meetings day in and day out. Do I really need to have a certification on facilitation? Not sure. But it was one of those things where I was taking the ACC and the same company also had the ATF. And so I was like, it's a combo, good price. And I was paying for it myself. So I was like, might as well get the most bang for my buck. Okay, I'll do both. I'll fit them in. And when I did, it was one of the most helpful courses because they did break it up over, it was actually multiple nights. I was in India, so it was a different time zone for me. And so I was able to come home, attend the class. They had us actually do the work, but then apply it with our team and then come back and talk about what we did.
Mm,
And for me, that helped me grow so much. It wasn't just textbook, and I really was taking time to inspect what I was doing, how I was interacting with the team, what that did, ways that I could do it better. And I walked away from that class with some tools that I created that I never thought about putting time into before. Like they had us create these facilitation guides. And one, it enabled me to have that consistent structure to meetings that I held on a recurring basis. But two, as other teams picked up Agile, I was able to give new Scrum Masters these materials and say, okay, here's your facilitation guide. And it had all the details they needed. Make sure you run this meeting, include these points. This is how it's normally run. This is the process. These are the tools you need. These are the people you need. And these guides were ready to go because I created them as part of the course. So, that's just one example where I took the course going in because it was a fit, time, schedule, money. Um, and I got out of it so much more. And I was so pleased that it was worth that time investment. And not only did I benefit from it, but definitely since then, the teams that I've worked with have benefited from it. So if someone has a chance to expand their skills, it's always a good thing.
yeah, a very good answer actually, and it's really similar with which I was usually saying like when you have a certification, it at least certified that you have known some stuff. Is it applicable to the particular team? The time will show, but at least you have this, like you said, like tools in your toolbox about
Mhm.
what to share and share about it. And this is really very important, and many people forget about this because I do love the quotation I heard in the internet. Like I said, I think it was Eisenhower saying like plan is nothing, planning is everything. So I think certification is planning in advance. I know I have a lot of tools, I know a lot of things. So if we have in some unexpected situation, maybe I will have a solution in advance. So this is actually very important in this. And I certainly don't like when people just get a certification, just forget them and like the saying, hey, yeah, I know this stuff, but you know that he knows only the book. And what I usually give an information on is that the book tell you how it is written. So it gives you the basis. It gives you also the starting point where you can evolve your own knowledge, your own path, yeah, where to go. But at least you will know the basics, and you need to start from somewhere. And also for the like more practical part in terms of like career perspective, as a person who is hiring, for me, when I see that someone is certified as CSM or I don't know, PCM1, PSPO, CSPO, something like this, at least I know that this person has formally accredited knowledge at a certain level, and I will invest less money, education, efforts to bring him on a level I want to. So in that case, it is like very, 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 very important to have this. Um, my next question is like more recent. So I are working for a big company which is in finance, and we're coming to the question, which also considered for me as an agile myth. Yeah. And one of these that Agile Scrum isn't working for finance because they have regulations for finance, for banks, for insurance companies, because there are regulations. There are, for example, for the countries like Armenia, there are central bank regulation. It's like something like Federal Reserve in US. Yes, so they have their reporting, they have their certain guidance rules, and you are like very, very, very limited in the flexibility that you can impose for your teams. So most of the people who come from banks, they are coming for two reasons for finances. First thing is they are like attracted with the flexibility that Agile offers. And the second one, they do want to explore how much of it is really working in finance. So they come with an attitude that's okay, this I do understand collective ownership, I do understand the teamwork, but it's not for us because we have regulations. So what's as a person who has like in the middle of that, What's your idea on it, and how to fight with such kind of attitude on the first?
So I have heard that. I understand that, but I think it's like any other industry. You can say it can't work for you, and if you only take pieces of it, it won't, but it can. Some of the most successful agile experiences I have seen have been in financial companies. It, locally here, one of the credit unions that is in my area is one of the leaders in the agile space. They actually open up their facility to teach others about agile and how it worked for them and how others can do it well. So they are one of the leaders, one of the innovators, one of the true success stories, and kind of like a standard in the agile community. A lot of people look to them for how did you do it? It works so well. So I've seen extremely high levels of success with it. I've also seen failures with it, and that was the excuse, oh, we're regulated. We have compliance. Yeah, really, in this day and age, most companies have compliance. Now, granted, I will agree there is an extremely high level of compliance, there's an extremely high level of security, but to that respect, agility actually can work better because some of those are gates that you have to be flexible and work around. You don't know when that dependency is going to be freed up. And so if you have a waterfall plan and you're trying to work with a dependency that's just not moving and you can't get to the next gate till it's done, you're kind of not in a good spot. But if the team is working in an agile methodology, they may have already talked about the dependency, talked about alternatives, talked about how they can work around it, or in parallel to it, they're thinking and they're continuing on. And I find that they're much more productive. I do find that it is still something where you have to deal with that compliance. You have to find your way around it, but you have to find your way to make sure it's addressed and addressed properly, no matter what methodology you're using. And I've seen great success in smaller and larger financial and insurance companies with it. So it's just a matter of, A, choice, and B, are you actually being agile, or are you just pulling out a few things like a tool and saying you're agile? And if you're just pulling out a tool and saying you're agile, but you're not being agile, then of course you're not having success. So don't be silly, you know?
Yeah, I see. Yeah, actually, I fully agree with the idea that for in difficult circumstances, in difficult regulational security, Agile can work better because you have less options. You have to be creative. You have to think how I don't want to use the word avoid the regulations. It's a bit different stuff, but how under regulations, usually when I'm to train some team and saying, yeah, we have a regulation, okay, I say, how are you gonna do this without violating the regulation but making the goal successful? And they start to think in that way. And the next thing, actually, what stops them in terms of not regulation is management as well, because usually in the such structures, like for example governmental companies or governmental banks or central banks, or like, there's like very, very straight hierarchical management, which is like the department head, the head of the department is like the king, he's deciding everything. And this is, I think, where is the core of the problem starts, because he need to approve all the decisions, he need to approve all the ideas, and it usually takes a lot of time to convince that this is okay, this is useful. So I think people who are trying to implement agile in financial field, in like banks or any kind of regulational field, they need to start from the management, because it's really very, very inspiring when your manager, when you're like, who is like above, is saying like, okay guys, do whatever you want to. If it is not illegal, if it's not violating the regulation, but helps us to move forward, just do it. And this is kind of, I think, the trigger for the call for the people to do this. But unfortunately, it's about mindset as well. Is it possible to train this mindset to shift for the management, for the finance? Because it's also actually I'm not saying a myth. It's something like it's thought to be like like this, not to change the mindset. What do you think?
Oh, I have so many things to say about what you just said. So I do think that one of the items that you need to be very cognizant of and respond to is the fact that management and their relationship with a team changes when you're working with a team that's truly agile. Um, so I don't think that it should be overlooked. I do think it should actually be spoken to, communicated with, planned through. Managers traditionally did have to plan a lot and dictate a lot. There were things such as, okay, this is a team member and they have so many hours and this is so much work that's going to take them so many hours. And so this is what we're going to get done. And they planned down to that level of little teeny tiny detail. And they told the team, this is the plan, and then go do it. And now the team's like, we don't need you to tell us how many hours we have and what task that's going to be contributing to and exactly how that long that task is going to take and so forth and so on. We know what work needs to be done. We actually know the best way to do it. We know when to do it. We know how it's going to get done. That the team gives you all that. They don't need a manager to tell them that. And you know what? They get it done. And actually, in my experience, usually a lot more when you liberate them. Um, but what we do need from the manager, we need the managers to ensure that they help remove blockers, they help remove impediments, they help ensure that those compliance things that can stick you up are unstuck and that they're made clear to the team and that the team doesn't have to go through hours and hours and hours of red tape if it's something that could be cleared up with one ticket or one email or something that a manager can help with. The manager can empower the team. They can build a lot of efficiency into the team by removing those things that are maybe above the team's level of ability to resolve or remove. We need managers. We need people to help in those heavier, weightier situations sometimes. So they still are a very important part of what we need to deliver in a financial setting or in an insurance setting, but we need to let them know, hey, this is your role and this is what we need from you. But you do, in exchange, you don't have to worry about these pesky things that you probably weren't excited about doing before anyways. And so, one frees up the other. And as long as everybody understands their new roles and their new ways of contributing, then it can be very, very helpful, extremely productive. But if you try to proceed with a team and say, hey, we're going to approach this and we're going to take it in and we're going to run with it with a Scrum framework. If management isn't on board and management doesn't understand what you're doing and how you're doing it, they're going to be very, very confused when they come in and see an information radiator that has a bunch of sticky notes on it and they're going to say, oh my gosh, don't we have a computer that can help with this? But when when you communicate and you bring them in at the ground level and explain what you're doing and why you're doing it, educate them maybe a little bit on the benefits of using high touch, low tech tools instead, and maybe let them know some of these things that you're doing that they're not aware of and let them see the benefits. Once they see some of the real tangible results, they can get very excited about it too. And once they're freed up and like you're not looking to them for maybe a report that they didn't like to generate before anyways, they're happy about that. And make sure they're aware, hey, when they make that extra phone call or that extra step that really empowers the team and makes a difference for the team, appreciate that manager too. And it's just a symbiotic relationship that can work very well. But everybody needs to communicate. We need to acknowledge that difference in how we need our managers to support us and vice versa.
And I believe it's a continuous work as well. So it's not like for one time talking with the management and say, "Hey, I get to the point." It's actually brings me that one thing that my mentor told me a while ago. She told me like when you start teaching or coaching the team, start from management, because if they understand, they will be like this the train who will guide the team as well, because otherwise they will be the ones who are stopping them because they don't understand what the team is doing. So it's always from the two parts. So it's actually a great thing. One question that I always ask at the end of the conversation is that what will be your advice for people who are just stepping in the industry. So let's imagine a person who is just saying, oh, this agile stuff, it works for me. I know how to work with people. I know how to talk with people. I just want to explore it further. So what will be your, not saying like words of motivation, but like tips from your already professional expertise from the past that you have passed? So what will be your words?
Well, the first thing is, if you have any interest and want to pursue it, definitely do it. This is an inclusive environment that we work in, and it's something that is very doable. You have so many resources available, so many people that are willing to help, and I find it to be a very fulfilling career path for me personally, and I've seen many others find the same. I would say that if you are going to dive in, do get that foundational knowledge that we talked about, and then make sure you balance that with a nice dose of reality. When you go into a workplace and you start comparing what you learned in a classroom or a book compared to how it operates in the real world, there's going to be variance. Be flexible, be reasonable. I found that the people that are most disappointed and stressed with an agile journey are ones that try to be absolute purists and say, but this is what it says on line such and page so and so. I get it. I love the intent. However, reality is we need to just sense and respond, and we need to adjust to the environments that we are in. Sometimes you can't go for the gold right out of the gate. Sometimes you are going to work in a location that says they're agile, but they're just maybe even doing a few agile things, and they're definitely not being agile or having an agile mindset. And you know what? That is okay. Over time, influence, lead, model, example,
Mhm.
share, and when you have success, it will grow. I do agree that it is so helpful when you have management buy-in initially, but I also want to say to these new Agilists, don't be discouraged if you talk to a manager and they don't immediately buy in. One of the pieces of advice that I had early in, and it worked really well, is even if you're the only person that wants to be agile, that's okay. Be agile, put those individuals and interactions before the process and the tools. And just again and again, find ways where you can example and people will see and they will adopt. And that does happen as well. So sometimes it's going to be a journey, a process before other people are willing to say, you know what, you're right, and come on board. But if this is the path that you want to take, then go down it and look for those people that will support you and help you and grow with you. And then just make sure that you do pay it forward and continue to lift up others when you can along the way.
Yeah, it's actually a great advice. Continuous learn, and I was thinking like continuous learning is the essence that we need all.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for finding time. So our guest today was Tricia Munsey, VP Senior Scrum Master Agile Lead in JP Morgan Chase from Florida. Thank you for finding time. This was the channel AgileSeeker, and we here talk with interesting people about interesting stuff. And see you next time.
Thank you, Armin.